Hi YouTube, this is Londian. I wanted to give you a quick rundown of my short-term emergency power supply and how that functions, and give you some ideas on maybe setting something up for yourself. I'm going to go and give you a quick rundown of each of the items, then I'll come back through and cover each of the items in detail so you have a little bit better understanding of what each component is and how it functions in the emergency power supply system. So the very first item here is the Astron power supply, and then the Astron power supply then runs into this guy right here, which is a power gate. From the power gate we run into this one here, which is this is known as a RigRunner. From the RigRunner we run into the amateur radio. And then again we've got the power gate, and the power gate also runs into the deep cycle batteries. So the first item I'm going to cover with you in the system is going to be the Astron power supply. The Astron power supply, this is specifically the VS35M. VS meaning that it's variable, 35 is the max amperage output that it can do. The first item here, power switch, pretty self-explanatory as far as that one goes. The first dial here is the amps. I've got it turned up almost all the way to max, and that's just saying how many amps I want it to actually output if the system was to draw that much. The meter just up above it is going to be the amperage meter, and it's going to show us how many amps the system is currently using. Since we're almost all the way over to zero, we can pretty safely assume we're probably doing like 1 or 2 amps at the very, very most. The next one here is the voltage dial. The voltage dial allows me to control, especially with these gel cell batteries, I'm able to increase the voltage a little for their charging type. Just above that we've got the voltage meter, and it's going to show us how many volts we are currently sending to the system. So the next item I'm going to cover is going to be the power gate. The power gate is basically the brains of the system and how it operates. This particular one is the West Mountain Radio Power Gate PG40S. The first thing I'm going to cover with you are these 3 pieces here. These are known as Anderson power poles. They're very commonly used in DC power supply systems, and they're basically a quick way to plug in and unplug your power connections. As we see, this one right here has the label PS on there, standing for power supply. So that's where the Astron power supply comes into the power gate. The next one is going to be where it says out. That's where the power goes directly into the actual amateur radio, or in our case we're going to be running it into a RigRunner, and we'll cover that one here in the future. The next one here is battery. This is the port that goes directly to the batteries so they can be charged, another one that we'll cover here in the near future. The 3 little LEDs that we see here, the first green one here where it says on means that we have power coming in. The next one over is the red one that says PK. That stands for peak. That means it's power. It's recharging the batteries at the highest amperage that we have selected. And the next one is FL. So when the FL is lit, it means that we're float charging the batteries because they've reached peak. Again, with the batteries and the peak charging here, we see we've got 2 other ports here. Now these are made for fuses, and that allows us to select different amperages that we're going to be charging the batteries at. When there's no fuses in there, it's going to be charging it at the lowest amperage, I believe, which is just 1 amp. And I like to charge mine as low as possible. It keeps the batteries as cool as possible as well. And that's the power gate. Okay, so the next item up here on the list is going to be the RigRunner. This particular RigRunner is another West Mountain Radio item, and this is the RigRunner 4005. Basically, a quick description of what a RigRunner is it's a power strip for your DC powered items. So you have input, and then we've got 5 outputs. We've got a 40 amp fuse for the input, because that's the most that the unit can handle. And then from there we fuse off the individual items depending on what we're running. So the first one here is the 25 amp for the actual amateur radio. This is a 20 amp for another amateur radio. And then this one, I either run a DC to AC power inverter, and sometimes I use this one for charging another amateur radio. And then this one I almost always use just designated for charging an amateur radio, typically a little handheld. And then this one I use for powering a very small meter, similar to the meters that you just saw on the Astron power supply. So again, RigRunner is essentially a power strip for DC power supply. And again, we can definitely see that we're using the Anderson power poles again here on this unit as well. Okay, so the last item on the list is going to be the batteries and the cooler that I've chosen to store these batteries in. These are the Optima Blue Top Marine Deep Cycle batteries. I'm going to zoom in here on the spec so we can take a look at what we're dealing with here. We've got the Optima Battery Blue Top 34M. These are gel cell batteries, and I'm running 2 of them in parallel so we can increase this number. That's the one we're going to focus on here today, and that stands for AH, stands for amp hours. So with 2 of them running in parallel, we're going to increase the capacity and go up to 110. We are running heavy gauge battery wires here to run them in parallel. As you can see, they're kind of crisscrossed. I couldn't fit both of the batteries in there with the length of these. These really, really heavy gauge battery cables, they're not very flexible. In addition to that, I've got each side, as it runs from the power gate into the batteries, I've got a 40 amp fuse on each of these. This over here is the lid for the battery that we've got uncovered, and I've got a piece of Gorilla Tape right there. Underneath that Gorilla Tape is 2 40 amp fuses, just in case I needed extras. So I just keep them underneath the lid there for this. I'm going to go ahead and disengage the camera from the tripod and show you the cooler. Okay, so the cooler that I went ahead and am using for this, I originally was going to use like a lighter weight, like Coleman style cooler, but the durability with these 2 fairly heavy deep cycle batteries in there, I'd pick up one corner of the cooler and it would just flex and bend, and it just had pretty much no durability as far as carrying something this heavy. So I went with this one after checking into coolers for a little while, and this is a Yeti. This is specifically the Tundra 45 quart. Really nice cooler. Latches down. We've got a couple little rubber straps here that hold it down. You can actually lock it on each corner. The type of locks that I've actually chosen to use for it when I do lock it are ones for locking in your trailer hitch receiver. They fit right in there. So that's the cooler right there. Extremely, extremely durable on this. They even sell different components so you can use it as a bench or a stool and that type of thing. So thanks again for watching, guys. That's my emergency power supply system there, and like I said at the beginning there, it is a short-term power supply system.